Hello, everybody. Um, my name is Greg Pollock, and I wanted to um, tell you my story. Um, it's it's kind of about my life in general, dealing with my sexuality and struggling um, to help take care of my mom through all of her illnesses. Dealing with a parent with depression and other illnesses, and trying to take care of oneself and one's mental state, and my struggle with weight gain, and then things that changed my life and made it better and helped me feel better about myself. Um, so yeah, it's kind of a collection of things. I'm out here on my porch, so if you hear a lot of noise, I'm sorry. Hopefully, you're getting good audio and you can hear me once I go through all this. But just bear with me. I hope that my video will help others. I hope that it will help me. Because lately it's been kind of a struggle, and so I just want to try to not only help others, but help myself a little bit. Gonna let that truck go by. So again, my name is Greg Pollock. I was born April 16th, 1984 in a little town called Olney, Texas. And I was born to James Pollock and Paula Pollock of Archer City, Texas. And I spent the majority of my life living in a small town. My parents were both, my dad is an oil field worker, always has been. He works his butt off 7 days a week to take care of his family and provide for his family, and he's done that for 50 years now, I think, or more. And when my mother became pregnant with me, she actually quit her job working at the nursing home so she could stay home and take care of me. Now, my brother, I do have an older brother. He's 15 and a half years older than me. So when I came along, it was a bit of a surprise, but also it was a miracle of sorts for my mother, because she had prayed for 10 years to have me. And finally here I came along, because the doctor told her she didn't have a chance of having another child at her age, which was almost 36 when she finally had me. And because of her blood type, he didn't think that she'd be able to carry a child to full term, and here I am. My parents both came from small towns. My mom's father worked in the oil field also, and did what he could to provide for his family. And my grandmother was a homemaker. And my dad's dad also worked in the oil field, and my grandmother was also a homemaker. And they were never rich people. They did what they could to provide for their family, but they were never rich by any means. They were always on the poorer side. But they were all hardworking individuals that did what they could to take care of their family. My mother had a little bit of childhood trauma, which I'm not going to go into, but there was some childhood trauma that she had to go through growing up. So my first 10 years of life were pretty normal. I mean, they were pretty basic. My brother graduated high school. 1 year I actually started kindergarten the next year, which is kind of interesting. My parents were both active. My dad worked a lot, so he didn't get to do a lot of things, but he was active as much as he could, and my mother always went on elementary trips with me and things like that. She was always the, room mom type person, and she drove the Sunday school bus to church, and she taught Sunday school and all these other things that every time church was open, we were at church. It was just who we were. My mother always had a great devotion to God. And now when I turned 10, she began to change a little bit. Her behavior changed, the way she acted, like she would stay up all night cleaning and she would sleep all day long. And she would do things that were just not typical. She'd take everything out of the cabinets and leave it all out and say, "Oh, we're gonna have a garage sale tomorrow," or something like that. Or it was, she would accuse my dad of having an affair, or she would do something that was kind of out of the norm for most people. And finally, my aunts and my dad convinced her to go to a hospital. So she went to the hospital, and they diagnosed her with manic depression. And she was in the hospital for a few days, and then her psychiatrist said, "Well, we need to take you to another facility, a mental health facility." And she said, "No, I'm not going." My mother was always adamant about not going to the doctor if she didn't have to go to the doctor. And the doctor told her, she said, "Well, either you go, Miss Pollock, or I'm going to have the cops take you." And I remember being a small child, I'm just 10 years old, and I remember being in that hospital room, and I'm eating my sandwich, and she's sitting on the bed, and I walk out the door, and there's these two police officers there, and I'm scared to death. Why are police officers near my mom's room? Like, why are they here? She's not going to jail. Like, where are they going to take her? I mean, I knew they were going to a different hospital, but I did not quite understand why they had to have police officers do it. So they finally got her to the hospital, and she was there for 2 weeks. And I remember the first time we went to visit her, I was 10, and you weren't supposed to be able to get to the 3rd floor unless you were 12. And my mother threw a big enough fit that they actually let me in to see her. But I remember going up that elevator, and there was always a man that sat in front of the elevator waiting to try to run onto the elevator to escape, and it scared me every single time we went up there. So there were a few times that I missed because I was just scared. I'm a kid, I'm just scared, And I remember the first time I walked into her room, and she was sitting by the window, and she was heavily sedated from them trying to figure out what medication would work for her. And she just stared off out the window into the distance, and it affected me deeply, because from then on I continued to have a recurring nightmare for probably another 15 years, in which I worried that I had this feeling of this arrow going over my shoulder and hitting her in the side of the neck, and she just shatters into a million pieces. And it was awful, and I would have it ever so often. But I remember going, and we did family night, where we'd sit in a group therapy family night and talk about things, and my dad was there every night to see her and try to take care of her. And during the day, my dad would do his best to take care of me and have my brother help, and he did the best he could, with what he had, because my dad was never like a homemaker type guy. So, and I knew even then at 10 years old that my mother, her actions weren't her own actions. They were the illness, and she couldn't help it. But I also remember being outside the hospital one day, and one of the ladies said that her husband was there and that he had attempted to commit suicide. And that stuck with me bad also. So after the 2 weeks, my mother came home. My grandmother and my aunts had been there before she got there, and they cleaned the house and made food, and they bought me new bedding and clothes and all these things, I guess, to try to make up for what was going on. And when she had gone to the hospital the first time, she bought me a music box. It was a Carousel music box because I love music boxes. And when she came home, she asked me where it was, and I showed it to her. And then she had brought me a few other little toys, and because she wanted to try to make up for what was going on, but she just wasn't the same. So we spent the next several years trying to learn who each other were again, who each other was again. And I remember every day I would go to school, I would have this thought in the back of my head that my mom would commit suicide. And I would come home and she would be gone. And so I would call her at lunch sometimes from the phone from the cafeteria to make sure she would answer. And I did it quite often just to make sure she was there. 2 years after that, she was diagnosed with diabetes. She got very sick. We finally convinced her to go to the doctor because, again, she didn't like going to the doctor. We took her to the emergency room. She walked in on her own. They took her blood sugar, and it was like 894. She should have been in a coma. She shouldn't have been walking herself anywhere. And yet there she was. So now we had a new adventure. Now she has depression, and now she has diabetes. And I had begun to have these feelings like young men do at a certain age. And I realized that mine were different. But I couldn't ask questions. I couldn't, because first of all, I didn't know what to ask because I didn't understand them. I was scared to ask, and also because my dad and mom didn't have time to deal with that. My mom was more important. So I put it on the back burner, and I tried to go on with everything that was going on and try to focus on my mom and taking care of my mom. And the next few years were okay. My feelings became stronger, and I began to struggle a little bit more with what was going on, and I would attempt to find, interesting girls and going on dates with girls, and I'd try to do this, but I always ended up as friends with girls, and I never could shake these feelings. But I had realized after, learning stuff that I shouldn't, to me at that time, I shouldn't have these feelings, that they were wrong. They were against what everybody else thought, and that I shouldn't have them, and they should go away. And so I would find myself praying every night that just make them go away, and make them go away, make me be normal, make everything go on, and trying to be a kid. But I didn't have a lot of close friends. I didn't hang out with kids. Other kids at that time. I didn't do much. Then my mom started getting psoriasis, which is a full body thing that caused her a lot of sadness and depression, and so then again I tried to push it all away and just focus on whatever I could. Meanwhile, my parents were so focused on other things that they couldn't help me with school, and I didn't really care about school, and so I let all my grades go to crap. Also, I never really felt like anything was interesting or challenging. I loved art. Love art. Painting, any drawing, any of that stuff. My mother put me in watercolors when I was 9. Loved it. I've always loved art. I've always loved painting. I love to sing. I developed a love for singing. I developed a love for acting, I think, because to try to become a character rather than myself. If I could become a character, I could be something else, and I wouldn't have to face what was going on in my life. So I struggled and struggled and struggled all the way through high school with all of that. And when I got into high school, well, actually, when I was in high school, I finally found a group of friends to hang out with, and we went to parties, and we did things, and we actually hung out, and we had a good time, But then that started me drinking. I would drink a lot on the weekends with my friends and kind of self-medicate my own depression that I had. I had gained a ton of weight compared to when I was a kid, and I didn't like myself. I hated myself. Again, I prayed every night. I cried all the time when I was alone to try to make heads or tails of things and try to make things better, and think just whatever I could do to try to escape what was going on. And then I got through high school, and my friends all went different directions, and I felt lost. I finally had a group of people, but then they all had things to do now because we're not in high school anymore. I mean, I can't expect them to hang around just for me. I didn't take my ACT or my SAT. I tried to take a college course, but then more problems started. I started smoking weed. I was drinking still. I was just trying to find a way. I did start going to church again. Went to a different church. Found some new friends. I started going to church again. I was enjoying that. And then I got into a slippery slope of harder drugs to self-medicate and forget about things. I never let it affect my daily life. I never let it affect my ability to do my work or things like that. When I was 19, I had gotten drunk with a friend. We had drank almost a full bottle of tequila, and she had gone with a group of girls for a little bit, and they brought her back because she couldn't get into the club, and she was so drunk it was bad. And one of the girls took her into one of the other bedrooms at the apartment that we were in and got her comfortable and laid her down so she could just sleep it off. And I finished the rest of the bottle, and I was completely wasted and about to just, knock out. And I went in there and I laid down next to the bed on the floor, and I passed out. A little bit later, I heard the door open, and I said, "Who is it?" And I heard a familiar voice, and it was a guy, and I said, "Just go back to sleep." So I went back to sleep. Passed smooth out again. And then I wake up to no. And my friend, she got up out of the bed, and I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Nothing." And she went into the living room, and I followed her into the living room, and I said, "What's going on?" And she says, "I just want to sleep." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." So I went back to sleep. Next morning, I woke her up. I drove her home. The whole time she's in the passenger seat, she's curled up in a ball, not saying a word to me. I get her home, and she says, "I'll call you later," and I didn't hear from her for 2 days. And I called her, and after 2 days, and I said, "What's up?" And she was like, "I'm in the hospital." And I was like, "Why are you at the hospital?" "Well, I'm getting a rape kit done because I was raped." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I'll talk to you about it later." And I realized in that moment that was because I had passed out and I did not do my job as a friend. And we have talked about it since then, and we have worked things out together, but at the time it was just devastating, and and still hurts me to this day that I didn't do my job because I was too fucking wasted. Pardon my language. But I remember from that day on, I didn't want to drink like that anymore, or at all. So I stopped drinking, and I continued smoking weed, and then I continued doing other things. And I did that for years, probably about 10 years of my life. And finally I quit, and I said, I can't do this anymore. This is ridiculous. I can't continue to self-medicate and not face my issues. But then once I stopped and I had to face my issues, my demons were much larger than I had remembered. By this time, my mother had breast cancer and was surviving breast cancer. And I remember her going through all of that and treatments and being sicker than a dog, and it was just awful. So now at this point, my mother's manic depressive. She's diabetic. She has psoriasis, and she's a cancer survivor. And she still kept her faith through all of that. Through all of that. And in this process, her mother had passed away, my grandmother, of dementia, which hit her extremely hard. So here I am. I'm much older now. I'm like 29, almost 30. I've decided to quit all the drugs and the self-medicating, and I just hit rock bottom. I felt like I had nowhere else to go. I had nothing where was I? I didn't have much to show for my life. I hated myself. I was way overweight. I just wanted to die. And I told myself if something didn't change quick, I was going to make a big decision. And then I got onto a chat site, and I began talking to people. And I made friends with some excellent people in another state. And they helped me realize that my life was important and that I could change, and that I needed to just accept myself and live my life. And so they helped me work on losing weight and accepting myself and living my life as it should have been all those years ago. And I lost like 90 pounds, and I accepted myself as being gay, and it felt like this huge weight had been taken off my shoulders. And I felt like I could do something. I could live again. I could do something. And so I started living my life, and I dated, and after my first boyfriend, I told my dad that I was gay, and he told me that he didn't quite understand, and that he might be a little disappointed, but he's going to love me no matter what because I'm his child, and nothing will ever change that, and he will never turn me away because he loves me and I'm his son. I wasn't sure how to break it to my mother, so my dad and I said I should wait until I felt like it was a good time. And it was the day of the Supreme Court ruling, and I told her in a funny little way about questioning her about what if her kids were gay. And I remember she was like, well, I guess I'll just have to get used to it, but I'm gonna love you no matter what. And then I went to do something else, and I came back and she was crying, and I said, why are you crying? I'm just trying to figure out what I did wrong. And I said, Mom, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. This is who I am, and I should have always been this way. I should have always been accepting of myself. I mean, I put off my life for all those years. I never had a relationship with a girl, and because I didn't want to hurt her, because my feelings wouldn't be totally for her. I attempted to try to be in a relationship with a girl, but then I realized afterwards that was stupid, because I would have just ended up hurting her feelings, and I couldn't do that to someone. So I continued to live my life, and I got in the gym, and I did all these great things, and I was working and trying to build my life up and make it better, and I dated a few people, and some things were good and some things were bad, and that's the way life always goes. And finally I got into a relationship that I've been in for a while, and I love it, and we've had struggles, and things are we do with what we can, but about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that, my mother was sick, and I convinced her to go to the hospital, because I'm the only one that she would listen to. And she went, and she was way more sick than we could imagine, and she had not told us at all about it, about how she felt. And after 2 days of CCU, my mom died. She passed away while my brother and I held her hands. And my heart broke in that moment. It broke in that moment. Because even though we had struggled together for all those years, her with her problems and me with my problems, and us arguing and fighting and trying to make things better for each other, I just wanted her back. And I still want her back. I want her to call me on the phone and tell me some kind of nonsense story, and I want her to tell me about her charities that she donated to, and I want her to tell me how Dad's bothered her all day. And I want her to bug me. I want her to call me at work and bug me about all these different things, and I want her to I just want her back. But I can't have her back. And I know I can't have her back. My mother was a kind soul, but her head would not let her do the things that she wanted to do. She always loved people more than she loved herself. She always wanted to take care of people more than she wanted to take care of herself. My mother was an angel on this earth. And I know that she probably looks over me. My regrets in life are that I didn't do something creative, that I didn't do something with all of my talents, with my designs, with art, with singing, with acting, with all of those things. I just want to do something that matters to the world. And I want my mama to know that created a wonderful son. Wonderful sons. My story is much longer, but much more detailed. But I'm already up to 30 minutes, and that's kind of crazy. All I know is I want you out there that feel like maybe you need to hide yourself or be different. Don't. What I mean by different, I mean be the same. Don't. Be you. Be crazy. Be wild. Be you. Don't ever let anyone tell you not to. Ever. Doing well, how are you? Always live your life and never let anybody tell you not to.